Hey there, I'm making this video to answer the three most asked questions to me. The first thing is, why should I be a web developer? Second thing is, what's the actual roadmap of a web developer? Number three is, what's the actual learning curve in learning the web technologies? So, my answer to the first question is, today the world is moving toward the mobile computing and ubiquitous computing, and these two computings widely use web technologies. So if you want to develop something in the modern world, you should have some idea of web technology. So you should be a web developer, or you should have at least a little knowledge on what web is and how web works. And the answer to the second question is, the roadmap is simple, but it takes time. So you should be patient in learning the web technologies. So that's the answer to the second. The third thing is, what's the actual learning curve? So in my point of view, the learning curve is kind of starts slowly, and at some point of time it becomes infinity, because in web technologies there is no end. You should keep on learning, and every month there is some kind of new frameworks coming on, new libraries coming, new different ways of doing something in web. So web is the is a section in the computing which is often altered or updated every day, every hour, even every second. So the learning curve is gonna be for a lifetime. So that's the answer for our third question. However, I would like to elaborate on the question of what's the roadmap. So let me say how to get started with web and how to increase your knowledge as time goes. The first thing when it comes to web you should know is HTML. So if you have some experience with HTML, you should know that everything in web is made of HTML. Everything you see in a browser is coded using HTML, which is a markup language. So to learn that, the best resource I know is the W3 schools. There you can go and learn the basics of HTML step by step. Take your time. This is the one of the most core part in web technologies. So the second is CSS. CSS is nothing but cascading style sheets. It helps to add designs and styles to the HTML code that you write. So this also forms the core of the web technologies. So the HTML CSS is the core of the web technologies, and it's also accompanied by JavaScript. So what is JavaScript? JavaScript is nothing but a programming language, which is a kind of a scripting language, and it's nowhere related to Java, and it's used to manipulate the website and make it more dynamic. So it adds the way by which you can make users to interact with a button, make some changes in the web page. So that's where JavaScript is used, and this is one of the most important part of the web technologies. So first of all, you need to learn the core parts, which is the HTML, CSS, followed by the JavaScript. So once you master these three things, next comes something called libraries and frameworks. So what are libraries and frameworks, and what is the need of it? Once you have learned the core concepts, you may feel that whenever you are developing a website or a web app, you are doing some things repeatedly. So to save your time and to make it more efficient, you need to use libraries and frameworks. So when it comes to CSS and HTML, these are the CSS frameworks which you should learn to save some time in design. So the first thing I would suggest you to learn is the skeleton CSS. It's the smallest CSS framework you can ever find. It is that simple. It provides you some kind of built-in classes and the grid system, and that makes your life a lot easier. So first get started with this skeleton CSS, and once you have got a good grasp of this, you should then go with something called the Bulma. Bulma is again a CSS framework, but it's a little advanced. Once you have learned skeleton, you will find this a little easier. Rather than getting started with Bulma, first learn skeleton and then go with Bulma. Once you have learned Bulma, you should learn something called Bootstrap. So what's Bootstrap? Bootstrap is an advanced CSS, and it's used by Twitter, and it's maintained by Twitter, and it's one of the most famous CSS framework which is used throughout the web. So you should learn Bootstrap. Then comes something called the Materialize CSS. This is from Google. It gives your web app and websites look of material design, and this gives you all the features that you can find in Google web apps like Gmail, Google Drive and all those things. Okay, and this has some little extra features than Bootstrap, but it's not as popular as Bootstrap. And next comes is the complicated CSS framework. So this must be your last choice, and it's not necessary that you should learn. You must learn semantic. Once you have a good grasp of Bootstrap and Materialize CSS, it's more than enough. But semantic UI is little advanced. If you want to learn, you can learn, and it provides a lot of features that you can use, like comment sections, avatars, and things like that. And once you have done with the CSS frameworks, the next thing we need to come is libraries for JavaScript. Even though JavaScript is good, but it is really bad in doing very simple things. Okay, so you may write 10 line of code to do something in JavaScript that's getting minimized into 1 line of code if you use jQuery. So jQuery is nothing but a library written in JavaScript which you can use to write little number of lines of JavaScript code. So jQuery is also widely used, and it's also easier once you have learned JavaScript. It's similar to JavaScript and add some more features to JavaScript. And next comes is jQuery UI. This jQuery UI adds some custom elements, some kind of custom elements and controls to the HTML controls. Like you may have sliders which are consistent across browsers. Here you can also have calendars, time, sortables, accordions, and all those things. So those things can be achieved using the jQuery UI. So that's your next choice. Then comes the JavaScript frameworks and libraries. So this React.js is also a library and a framework. So what's a framework first? Framework is a lot like library, but it consists of lot of libraries, and it also gives you some kind of opinionated, like kind of it should be giving you some kind of opinions on how you should name your file, how you should manage your project. So those kind of opinionated libraries are called frameworks. React is simply a library, but added with other packages that React provide, it can become a framework. So it's built by Facebook and it's used in Facebook, and it's one of the modern library. It's used throughout the web. So you should learn React. And then comes Angular. This is from Google, and this is one of the growing framework which is used all over the web. And Angular is pretty new, and it had a first version called AngularJS, but then they changed it into Angular 2, which is completely different. So you should go with Angular 2. Angular 2 is a full-fledged framework which provides you routing and a lot of things, and it gives you a lot of opinions in how you create files, how you name them, how you place them in your project. So it's fully opinionated, and Angular 2 is a framework. So that should be a last option in learning, and the list goes on. A lot of other frameworks and library, but I think this is more than enough for getting started with web. And next comes is the backend. Now we have seen all things for the front end. Now for the backend, you need something called a backend language or a scripting language, and this is not specific to your browser. These things run on the server. Server can be any machine. You can install any platform. You can have anything installed on it. So there is no dependent on the browser. So the best choice to learn first is PHP. PHP 7 is out, but PHP is not the most used thing now in the web technologies. It is it's losing its popularity. So, but it's a good thing to begin. So you should learn PHP first, so it will give you a great idea on how the backend is managed, how you can interact with the database, how sessions are managed, and all those things. And next is the SQL. So SQL is nothing but structured query language, and it's used to interact with the database. The SQL is just a kind of top layer. You have specific databases like MySQL, Oracle, where the SQL commands differ. So you should I prefer you to learn first MySQL, then Oracle, but learning one database would give you a great idea of how actually SQL works. So learn SQL. Once you are done with the SQL and PHP, the next thing is to learn the backend framework. So Laravel is one of the best frameworks for PHP. So what's a framework in the backend side? This also provides a lot of opinionated kind of things, like how you should place your file, what the name you should give for your file, and it provides kind of other features like MVC, like model view controller, and all those features are bundled with these frameworks. Laravel even has built-in authentication that you can use out of the box. So that's the framework that you should learn once you learn PHP. And here comes one of the most used framework in the web today. It's called Ruby on Rails. um, it's used by many big companies like GitHub, you know, other many other big heads, and it's popular, but lately it's losing its popularity due to this one called Node.js. Node.js is not a framework; it's kind of backend written in JavaScript. It uses the Chrome V8 engine, and here you can write JavaScript in the backend. It's like a kind of runtime environment, and Express is a framework which is written on Node. So you should learn Node as a last option, and Node is the most sought out thing in the web today. And then finally, this is an optional thing called Webpack. Webpack is nothing but an additional tool which you can use in your development to make your development faster. For example, once you have learned CSS, there's another thing called Sass. Sass is kind of an improvement over CSS, which provides you variables and all those things, but those things can't run in your browser. So what Sass does is it takes that Sass and converts that into pure CSS, which can be used in the browser. So that part of conversion can be handled using Webpack. And Webpack not only does that, it can also compile JavaScript. Suppose if you want to use JavaScript, which is the latest version, but it's not supported by all browsers, you can write the latest JavaScript, and this Webpack converts it into some kind of older version of JavaScript so that it be supported by all the browsers. And there are a lot more in Webpack. So this is kind of thing which you may optionally learn, and it provides you with helpful features to make your development more productive. So that's all. These are the technologies that you can learn to be a good web developer. And to be frank, this list is gonna increase, and some may get dropped off as time goes because they are not useful anymore. So you have to keep updating in web technologies. Hope this gave you a clear idea of what a roadmap of a developer look likes. And if you looking to get started with web, this is your right time. You should get started. So if you liked it, hit the like button. If you are not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you.